Adam, one last story, and once again, would be a big story in any week except this one. I'm going to take it over to. Let me just pull it up here. I'm going to take us over to Joanne Salzman at CNET. So Netflix is getting into games. Netflix is expected to expand into video games on its service at no extra cost within the next year, widening from its bedrock business of TV shows and movies as the world's biggest subscription video service, according to a report by Bloomberg. It would move Netflix into a major entertainment segment, gaming, that it has called out as some of its stiffest competition for your attention. Netflix confirmed Wednesday that it has hired a former Oculus Electronics Art, there we go, and Zynga executive Mike Verdu as president of games development. A spokeswoman declined to comment beyond his hiring. The games will be available as though they're a new genre on the service, and Netflix does not plan to charge extra for them, according to Bloomberg, citing an unnamed person familiar with the matter. Interesting enough as it is, but then it gets even bigger. So this is coming from Hope Bellingham at Games Radar. Netflix and Sony partnership? ? PlayStation images of a DualSense controller and Ghost of Tsushima have been discovered in the Netflix app by a data miner. Data miner Steve Moser, I believe that's how you pronounce it, claims that they've found several traces of Netflix and Games project in the streaming service app data, and that it has been and it has the working title of Shark. Moser shared in a tweet that they've also found images of a DualSense controller and Ghost of Tsushima, hinting to some kind of partnership between Sony and the service. As for why Ghost of Tsushima is important, and I just skipped a little bit. As for why Ghost of Tsushima is important, well, it's revealed earlier this year that there is currently a Ghost of Tsushima movie in development with John Wick director Chad Stahelski, which may now be heading to Netflix. Continuing on later. As for Sony's relationship with Netflix, the two companies have already secured a deal which sees many of Sony's blockbusters, including the upcoming Uncharted movie, which is based on the PlayStation exclusive game of the same name, and Venom 2, heading for the streaming service exclusively after its time in the cinemas. Adam, right off the top of your head, what are you expecting from Netflix foray into gaming?
Well, if you got the person from EA and Zynga in on it, I wouldn't expect anything good.
Yeah.
That would be my first worry. The fact that they put the guy from a company that likes to take every nickel and dime they can get from you, and then a company that really loves to take every nickel and dime they can get out of you, I'd be a little bit worried. But then we're talking Netflix, where you just pay your monthly fee, and it looks like it would be just part of Netflix. So, at least monetarily, it doesn't look like it would kill you. Now, that just comes down to what's the streaming service going to be like? Is it going to be any good? I mean, we obviously have things like xCloud and PS Now to go off of. So there are plenty of ways to look at it. I mean, Netflix is the biggest streaming service there is out there. So, you could make the argument that it would have to be at least half decent. But then again, after that, the question becomes, okay, well, what games are we talking about? Are there any major games? Will it be a lot of indie stuff? I mean, if the Sony thing's true, does that mean we're getting Sony games on there? To which my question would be, well, what the hell's the point of that? You have PS Now, so what's going on with PS Now? So there's more questions, I think, than I can possibly have answers with this news, which means that, we're definitely going to need some more time to actually get an official statement. Sony would need to clarify a few things, whether that is done in the Netflix statement or whether Sony comes out on their own. We haven't heard a straight denial from Sony about this stuff, which is interesting, at least not to my knowledge. So
yeah, I haven't seen anything.
I don't know what to personally think about it. I mean, if it means Sony abandons PS Now and lets Netflix run the streaming part of it, I don't care either way because I don't use PS Now. I would just have to wonder if that means if I get Netflix Now and that covers me for PlayStation streaming games, that's a little bit strange at the same time too, unless Netflix and Sony are specifically really tight together, because I can't imagine having to open Netflix on my PlayStation 5 to play PlayStation games. It just feels weird if from a Sony branding perspective.
Well, let's break this down a little bit. I mean, yes, when I hear that, they've got former Zynga and EA sort of companies, that's not a company you necessarily want to have tied to a game developing company. However, I don't think that that's going to be the space that they're going to get into. I don't think, and I'm hoping that they don't. I think, to be honest, I think Netflix going into a free to play sort of mentality doesn't make any sense, especially if I'm paying for the service. Why am I paying for the service in order to get free games, or to get free games that I then have to pay to play? What I think to expect from this? Like, I think this is a really good move from Netflix. I mean, we've seen this move into, streaming games. You see this with Game Pass. You see this with PlayStation Now. You're seeing it with Stadia. And I think, to be honest, of all those people, I mean, Xbox is doing great. PlayStation Now, I hear, is running better. Stadia is hanging in there. But I think Netflix is really the one that could do it. Like, their whole platform is based on streaming. Do I think we're going to get, graphically impressive? Do I think we're going to get the next, Witcher game or the next big AAA? Probably not. I think it's a lot to stream that kind of stuff out there, but I think Netflix could do it if they wanted to. But I think what Netflix needs to do is just kind of try and make interesting, games that are interactive and there. They don't have to be fantastic because I'm already paying for my Netflix subscription. But if they can get some cool indie games on there that I don't pay for that are just loaded up, it's great. In terms of delivery, one of the other things that hinders Google Stadia is I need to pay to get into Google Stadia. I need to buy their controller. I need to buy their system to get in. Netflix is already in my house and already has a input device. I'm playing Netflix on my PlayStation already. I've got a controller that works with it. It wouldn't be hard for them to kind of say, hey, you already have all the equipment. You already have a subscription. Just jump in and try it. And I think that's one of the things that's going to benefit them the most in terms of getting into this space. So I'm hoping that what we see unique, creative, AA sort of indie level style games on their system. But let's break this down a little bit more. So with this Sony split, like, how do you see, like, do you think that this makes sense that Sony and Netflix would work? Because for me, I do. I think this actually makes a whole lot more sense. Sony is struggling with PlayStation Now. It is not getting the publicity, it is not getting the attention that Game Pass is. And I don't know how you would make those two competitive. But if I have a PlayStation or if I have a Netflix account, let's say I have a PlayStation, device, or I have an Xbox, and now I can play games through Netflix or whatever. This is a great opportunity for Sony. A lot of people already have a Netflix subscription, and you can now convert those into gamers, saying, hey, here's our PS3 games, here's a couple PS4 games, get in and try it and play it for free. The install base is already there. A lot of the equipment and the technology is already there. So you can have it set up where a PlayStation controller works with Netflix. Great. And then, hey, you just watched the Ghost of Tsushima movie. You liked it? Try the game. It's on Netflix right now. You can play it right now. Or, you played the Uncharted movie or the Uncharted game. Check out the movie. Like, I think there's a great partnership there. And it has an install base that I don't think PlayStation Now even comes close to. So it's a good way to kind of get people in and get people aware of your brand. I'm not saying put the newest, greatest, but if it's there and I'm not paying extra for it, hell yeah, like, that's awesome.
Well, I think the question that I would have immediately would be, okay, but business-wise, what does that mean? Because, I mean, again, we may joke that PS Now has not been a lot of work has not been really put into it. Sure, giving it to Netflix would be a smart idea because Netflix already has the streaming ready. All you got to do is just find a way to get the games on there and whatever else and test them out to see if it can handle it. So the server load shouldn't be the issue, but now my issue comes into, not like as a customer, I could care less, but I'm thinking like, why would Sony do this if they're now going to make even less of a cut on the streaming rights to their games? And at the same time, like, Netflix is getting a cut of their stuff. I don't think Sony's going to get a cut of whatever Netflix does.
No, I think if I was...
So it's a weird like deal to finagle, because if I'm Sony, I'm sitting there being like, why don't we just put a little bit more work into PS Now instead of literally giving a bunch of the money that we could be making off of the service to Netflix, who honestly doesn't need us and is just probably just taking it as just something else to stick in their library to make it seem like they keep adding. Well,
I think if I was in this sort of discussion, I think the value proposition for Sony is that, one, you're benefiting from the server networks that Netflix has, and it's no longer your problem to maintain all these servers that can stream games. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where the entire PlayStation Now catalog is going to be on there. If you think of what Netflix's business model is, here is, several different shows. They're going to be on there for a couple months and then they're gone. So if Sony has a rotating library of games, here are 10 games this month that you can go in and try. And then, every month there's, 5-10 new games that are getting removed and added. It has a cycle where they can kind of bring out some IPs, bring out some games that aren't getting the attention. And then you have people who are, maybe not going to drop the money to play a PlayStation game, but now they're, getting a chance to dip their feet in at a low cost of entry. I don't imagine that PlayStation's going to do this for free, though. So I think what'll happen is Netflix will sort of pay them to a certain cut, just like they do with PlayStation Plus or whatever. Hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars to host these games for this month. And it now makes it that Netflix is a service that, is that people are going to play games. Because I can't imagine that they're going to be building enough games for themselves to justify me looking to Netflix as my primary developer or my primary gaming console. But if they can say, hey, we've got all these PlayStation games, we've got maybe these Xbox games, and we also have some like Netflix original gaming things. Like that's currently Netflix's model for movies, and I can see them doing the same thing for their gaming world. And I think that's kind of where it's going to go. They'll pay PlayStation, they'll pay Xbox, they'll pay Ubisoft or whoever to have a couple of games hosted to kind of fill their library as they slowly make more and more Netflix original games.
Well, I guess the question ultimately as a business would be, okay, well, what do you think is going to be worth in the long run? Taking a cut so that you have a better service and a bigger clientele potentially with Netflix, or is it worth maybe putting a little bit more money in to actually make your service worth using so you have the entire cut? Because it's an interesting question, right? Do you take less money overall to just let somebody else do all the work for you? Or do you put a little bit more money into it and hopefully get even more customers onto your service and get a bunch more money that way? It's really just which direction you want to go with. And if I personally don't care which one they take, it doesn't really make a difference to me. As a customer, it's just I want to be able, like, if I can find a way to play a really good game that I don't want to spend $60 for $15, I'll take whatever you give me. Just give it to me. I don't care which way it is. So it's just my thing is Sony that disinterested in PS Now that they're willing to abandon it? Because if you go to Netflix in any capacity, I think you have to abandon PS Now completely, because then what's the point of having it?
I think, well, there's a third option, and that is that they make PlayStation Now far more robust, or you integrate it with PlayStation. Like, we're also looking at an option. What if Netflix became partnered as part of a PlayStation Plus subscription, and PlayStation Now also became part of that? Like, there could be a situation where, hey, if you're on Netflix, here's a small taste of PlayStation. If you're subscribed to PlayStation Now, here is the entire category. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that Netflix and PlayStation Now are competing with each other. It could be a situation where here's a small little taste, here's a small rotating games that are curated for you, and then here's PlayStation Now, a whole wide library. Like, they can double down on both, really.
Well, the only reason I don't look at that option personally is because I feel like an option like that would require somebody to have a stake in the other. I can't see an option like that without Sony having a piece of Netflix or Netflix having a piece of Sony. I can't see them wanting to work that tightly without like somebody having a stock ownership in either company. It just seems like it's way too deep a partnership that could fizzle at any moment without some sort of like actual monetary like stock level partnership like we would see with some other companies out there.
Well, you have to remember that they are already making agreements. Like, they kind of talked in that article that like they've already secured deals with, having, maybe Ghost of Tsushima there as a Netflix exclusive.
Well, yeah, but we're talking film rights versus the games themselves, right? Because we work the same way with like Fox and Marvel. Like, Marvel has some of its properties out to other places for the film rights, but they still have like the comics and the game rights to some chess. Like, Fox has Spider-Man, the films, whereas Sony has the games. So it's like, I don't think there's a necessary correlate. Like, there's not really a correlation between the films and the games themselves. I think there is two separate things. I can't personally see it. I'm not trying to like say that this isn't an option. I'm just saying, like, I find it really hard to see a PS Now, PS Plus, Netflix sort of partnership without like some sort of financial stake being given.
I'm just saying, I think the fact that they're already making contracts, already making agreements, there's nothing to say that they couldn't say.
Oh, I'm not saying it could happen. I would have to expect there to be a stake somewhere. I don't think that they would make this partnership without it. It wouldn't make any sense, I think, from a business perspective, to suddenly have your brand along next side to another brand without anything apart from like essentially a paper agreement that can be just tossed any moment.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities for them to get more brand awareness and get more people trying out their systems. you get kids who don't have a system yet, or maybe like they are playing Nintendo, or like they have an Xbox, and it's like, hey, try these PlayStation games. By the way, if you like these, there's more here. Adam, one last question. We'll go on this before we get into the big topic of the week. If you were to kind of, based on like, you've watched a lot of, people get out of games, get out of development. If you were to give one piece of advice to Netflix, let's say, Mr. Netflix is listening to this show, what advice are you giving him to succeed?
Put some actual decent games on the service. PS Now doesn't do it. Like, if you're talking PlayStation, like day one, like, okay, here's my piece of news right now. You want us to take you seriously? Day one, Last of Us Part 2 has to be on there. Honestly,
that's not bad.
You gotta put a big one. Like, put the remaster and Last of Us Part 2 on there. You want us to take your service seriously? You gotta put one of the biggest games out there on there. If you start out by saying your biggest game is Uncharted 4, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a big game, but it's been given out for free or really, really cheap consistently for about a couple of years now. So it's not going to cut it. You need to come out with a splash. I don't even think Tsushima is enough. I think you need to go straight up Last of Us 2 to make people go, oh, okay. That'll get the buzz going. I'm not saying Ghost of Tsushima wouldn't turn the needle, but like you put a headline of Last of Us Part 2 to be on Netflix Gaming Day 1 or Netflix Shark, whatever they're calling it. You got some eyes.
Yeah.
Especially because, although it would be weird because HBO has The Last of Us.
Yeah,
show.
I think you'd probably get Ghost of Tsushima before you get Last of Us.
Probably, but that's like, or maybe Horizon Forbidden West, depending on what the timeline is, or God of War.
We're not getting Horizon Forbidden West on there or whatever. But I think for me, like, if I was talking to Mr. Netflix, I'd say, it's really what's going to make or break you is the game selection. And if you're coming out with older games and that's all you have, that's not going to, at least for like the hardcore gamers. But I think your game library is going to make or break, and you need to have some original games that
it would take a major PS4 or major PS5 release that hasn't gotten a big price dip yet. Like Miles Morales might do it. Mm-hmm. Tsushima, like I said, might do it. Demon Souls might, but I think that core audience has already bought the game. I don't know if you're going to get too much else out of that. Like I said, that's why my brain immediately goes Last of Us 2, because that's the one that people know. Like, that's a game of the year, so...
See, I think, though, like, you're looking to target, like, us gamers, and I don't think we're going to be the target audience for this. I think it's going to be, hey, you've heard of gaming, you're kind of interested, like, here, check this out. And I think something like Ghost of Tsushima is far more accessible, so more appealing to a wider audience.
Really? You don't think Last of Us, which is a super dramatic, like, game, would not get people's attention?
I think we'd get people's attention.
Not to mention because it's very much like the post-apocalyptic. You get the Walking Dead crowd's attention.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that like it's a very divisive game, and it's not a feel good, like it's not a fun game in that sense. Where I feel like Ghost of Tsushima is a little bit more fun in that.
I was gonna say the kind of stuff that's famous on Netflix isn't necessarily fun either.
No, I know, but if you're trying to pull people in, but yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are, let us know what you think. Message us on, like, reach out to us on, Twitter, Instagram. Let us know what you think, or if you're listening to us on YouTube, send a comment down below. What do you think Netflix is going to look like when it gets into the gaming sphere? What are you expecting, and are you going to try it? Let us know.